Where is everyone at tonight? We have a great lesson. We have been in a series of lessons called, it's basically spiritual growth, and but it's for everyone. I tell you this, guys, because this isn't me as a person. I'm a believer. I believe in God. I'm a Christian. But I am not, I don't exclude people. So I'm inclusive. And I believe that the message is for everyone who wants to hear it. And a lot of this stuff can be used in our lives, okay, whether we believe or not. We can use it in our workplaces. We can use it with our families. We can use it, at school, however old you are. In fact, even my grandson, who's 8 years old, I've taught him this stuff. We go over it lots of times when we're reading. We have this book that he reads. He's 8 years old. He reads at it. He's 8 years old, and he's I think he's in the first grade. He reads at an 8th grade level. Okay. That's a big number for a little kid. Okay. So he reads really, really well. He doesn't just read, but he comprehends what he's reading. And so I have this book that he used to live with me. They now moved away and everything, but I have this book. It's called 1,000 Questions. And in the book, each night he would pick out which question he would want to ask. I get to pick a question, and then he gets to pick a question out of thousands of questions. And so some of the questions, ask things like, what type of animal do you like? Do you like elephants, or do you like birds, or some funny question like that, right? Or it might be, do you prefer ice cream or hamburgers? And we will sit and we have a conversation about the questions, right? Hey, what's up? I see you there. And this kind of gets us into having him comprehend what he read, but also to have a conversation, to come up with words, to communicate and conversate. And so it's kind of teaching a child how to have feelings, about what you're talking about, but also to, communicate and to have a kind of a rhythm in a conversation, right? Because, you're talking, and then, you fuel off of what someone just said, and then also you can take what that person said and then run to a whole different subject, but yet it's still kind of working within the same theme, right? And then you kind of find your little niche that you're conversating, and you're finding this really interesting on how you're conversating with someone, playing off of words. But then you realize you're just having a wonderful time just being in the presence of another person, that person that you really like, right? For me, it's my grandson, and so, sometimes we just sit quietly, we were at church and he fell asleep on my shoulder, and that's going to be a memory imprinted in his mind. So it's not always the conversation that is the imprint in someone's memory or mind or feeling. It's sometimes just the way you felt while you were with them. Okay, maybe you felt safe. Maybe you felt comfortable just being yourself, just sitting there, just being yourself, right? Or you just felt like you could say whatever you wanted to say, but maybe you just didn't say it. you know, and it could just be a lot of different things. So a lot of the things that I'm teaching are in the theme of spiritual growth, but for everyone. Okay. So today is Sunday, and I'm glad to have you here. I see you guys there. I could see your comments, and I'm reading them kind of as I'm talking, and I'll read them out loud after I'm done going through my lesson a little bit, and then I will stop and I'll read all the comments, and then I love to kind of hi, Lori, I see you there. And then I like to kind of read what you guys are saying and then communicate and talk about that. Or answer questions and things like that too. Our topic is low self-esteem. So we were on a lot of different subjects in the past few lessons. They took us through, self-awareness, the whole growth workshop is basically on growth anyway, our self-awareness anyway. But we had a lot of conversations about, what was the last couple of ones? We read about some of our character, some things that trigger us or, make us act funny or, make us emotional, the way that we respond to certain things. One of them is denial. Another one is minimizing, rationalizing, blaming and accusing, generalizing, dodging, and emotional smoke screens. And it just goes on and on. And we learned a little bit about that, right? So today it's low self-esteem. And so when you think about low self-esteem, what do you think about? What's kind of the first thing that comes to your mind when you're thinking low self-esteem, right? Here in the Bible, in Judges 6:12-15, it says, when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "But, sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our fathers told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and put us into the hand of Midian. You have," the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in strength. Go in the strength that you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. I am not sending you." But the Lord Gideon asked, "How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh." So here you're hearing Gideon replying in a space of low self-esteem, right? You're hearing his weakness. You're hearing him like what? Like, my clan is like, they rumored to be like, they're made fun of, or, they're the weakest, and, they don't have the power to, overtake anything, and I don't know if you feel like this sometimes too, but like, you go to like, you living your best life or whatever as a believer, or just as a human, you're living your best life, right? And you come across certain situations where, people have said to me, for instance, I love to, pick the brain of strong women. And I'm like, a strong what? Where? Who? Like, what? You're talking to me? And like, sure, I know that I've done some things, right? But it was not I wasn't thinking in the sense of like, whoa, I'm strong. Like I'm gonna, I'll be okay on my own strength. No, I was thinking in the sense of, oh my goodness, I'm scared. I'm terrified. I landed in a I landed in Poland, for instance, right? I went by myself because I felt compelled. I felt that was what God wanted me to do. Like I knew without a doubt, out the shadow of a doubt, I knew that He wanted me to go to Poland, which is not a big deal. People go to Poland. It's not a big deal, right? And meet up with strangers, okay? Strangers who I'd never met, and go into, Ukrainian like camps, where they refugee camps, and so I was taken. My host was taking me because my interpreter, who I didn't know any of these people, okay. So I literally felt like I was in a James Bond movie. I play things in my head like I'm in a movie a lot. I'm very, very dramatic in that sense. So, and then, in the moment, I'm not thinking anything. I'm just thinking, whoa, this is kind of scary. Oh man, they want to come into my, my little condo that I rented. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know these people. Like, and so, we made good friends. We had the best of time. We had, great coffee, Polish coffee, which is amazing. Oh, the best, but, then, we met Ukrainians who fled their country, and we sat down and heard their stories together, with strangers. We were all strangers, and we made friends with each other. And it was just amazing, but it was scary. It was unpredictable. It was, who knows what. I didn't speak the language. At one time, my interpreter had to take off in a different direction, and forgot that like I've never been to Poland, and I don't know, where I'm at or where I'm going to go, or even how to read the address out. So, I kind of was left and had to catch the Uber, or like a taxi. It's called Bolt over there. We had to catch something called Bolt, which is like Uber. And I'm trying to communicate with this person, on what the address is. Eventually, I got to my destination, but navigating all of that is, in the moment, kind of you're kind of so engaged in trying to communicate that you forget that you're scared, and then afterwards you're kind of like, oh man, that was so scary. And then you get back to your country, and you just gone on with your life, back to work, back to normality. Nobody knows what you've done or where you've been, until someone catches wind of your story, and then they're like, wow, I love to hear stories about strong women. And I'm like, okay, you are not, I am not the one. I am not the one. I can tend to be shy. I can be awkward. I love going into new environments and meeting new people. I love that. I love to be social in that moment and time and things. Yes, there are things that are scary that I've done, but it was all not just me. It was in what God was leading me to. And if he's leading you to it, he's going to equip you to do the thing. Okay. It's not you. I have a lot of different conversations with people who are like, these are the people that are not real far on in their faith and in their belief. And they tend to think that they're the ones who are saving people, right? They have this heroic kind of lingo going on there, and we have to be careful of that, because we are not the ones. God is perfectly capable. He did not need me to go to Poland, to go into no Ukrainian, places or anything, or he didn't need me to go to Lahaina. He does not need me. Okay. I just felt like I wanted to hang out. I have some skills to bring to the table, and I just felt like I wanted to be in the midst of all of the excitement, and the years of being humbled by God, have kept me humble. Okay. The years of failure, the years of humiliation, the years of me saying things like, it can't be done unless I do it, or feeling like that, and God showing me replacing me with someone else who will do it, and has done it. And the years of that has caused some growth in my spirituality, okay? And knowing that he doesn't need me or you. He is perfectly capable of speaking to whoever he wants to. He spoke to people in the Bible. He used a donkey at one point, okay? For me, I was sitting in my room in a foster care, okay? Because I had lived in an environment where I could not live at home any longer. It had become dangerous to live at home. And, and I don't share that all the time, but, you got to know that there's some reason why I had to be in foster care, So I'm just sitting there minding my own business. Okay. And God dropped himself known to me. He found me. I did not know how to look for him. Okay. I was not lost by him. He, we use words like he found me and this and that, which is just a kind of a figure of speech, but I was not lost. He did not lose me. Okay. He made himself known to me at a time when I called on him. I said, God, where are you? I was angry. It was more like an angry tone. And I was like, are you really real? Right. And he showed himself real to me. And through a series of events, I found myself in a little church, where it wasn't a mega church where I got lost in the crowd. No, the pastor and his family himself, came and discipled, me, and I grew in the Lord and in faith. And, the pastor would tell us every time those doors are open, be there. It's kind of strict and stuff. I kind of laugh now, harmless, probably needed. We don't do that today in this world today. We don't do things like that. It would be abuse and toxic. But in my growing up years in church, that's what happened. So I'd be here every time the doors are opened. And, I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning, a career woman, and, driving down to the church, stopping at the 7-Eleven because there were no other coffee shops. We didn't have the fancy Starbucks and all of that in those days, So there I am, stopping at the 7-Eleven, to get my giant 7-Eleven, coffee, and I was just a very young career woman. So, my coffee was full of sugar and mostly milk. So when I think of it today, I think that is awful. I could never drink that ever again. I'm more of an espresso person now, just give me a shot. But those were the days that, helped me and imprinted in my memory, and the feeling and the smells still to this day when I think about those prayer days of going down there, the torture of the cold metal, cheap chairs that we had, because our church didn't have any money. I probably was the only one tithing at the time. And, cold winter mornings down there, and, torture, I didn't want to be awake at that time, and praying and believing God together, together with the pastor and a few other people that, would be tortured to come in too. And, but the imprint stays with you, just like the imprint will stay with my grandson just sitting next to me or falling asleep on my lap at church. He will forever remember those days. The reading of the 1,000 questions together. We will have that memory and a laugh, because I recently visited him and we laughed about that. And you remember we used to read that book? He's like, yeah. And so he was thinking about it. He's like, yeah. And then he had me put on some virtual reality goggle thing, and I was freaking out. Like, no, get it off. I don't like this AI stuff. So God is in control, not you, not me. Okay? He has it under control. I am not the savior of people's lives. Not at all. I am just a human, flawed, and to be honest, we all, all of us in this world, given any open opportunity at the right time, at the right place, any Christian, any human would probably choose something pretty wrong, okay? And so we make ourselves aware so that we know the tactics of the enemy, and we have a choice. We have a choice to choose how we will live our life. We're the only creatures in the world that are given the ability to choose, okay? You can choose what God you want to serve. You can choose whether you want to do right or wrong. We have the ability to choose that, okay? I choose to live the best life that I can possibly live. I cannot be, I cannot follow the 10 commandments perfectly. No human can. In fact, that's why people back in the Old Testament or whatever, back in those days before Jesus, had to sacrifice a lamb and do these crazy things that they did, to clean themselves of their unrighteousness, right? So we have been given the Lamb himself, Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, who already has done it. He paid the way. He paid the debt that we owed. And so there's no debt to pay anymore. We don't have the means to pay that debt. You know what I mean? And he's let us go from that. So, I want to read to you 3 elements that contribute to low self-esteem. Okay. And kind of listen to this very carefully, because this might be you, and you might say, whoa, yeah, that's me. I tend to do that when I'm feeling some low self-esteem in my life. Failing to accept who we are to God. Let me read that again. Failing to accept who we are to God and who He created us to be. Okay? Number 2, not accepting that we are created by God and therefore equal to others. Okay? Number 3, the sinful behavior and attitudes we fall into, which separate us from God and our loved ones. Let me read that again. The sinful behavior and attitudes we fall into, which separate us from God and our loved ones. Okay? One of the things that encourages low self-esteem is a critical, non-affirming environment in the home for children. If you've grown up in a home that is really critical, like, everything that you do is, not good enough, or it's sabotaged, right? Maybe it's good in the moment, but after they've had a few drinks and are intoxicated, it becomes sabotaged and very toxic and very critical to a child. Okay, 1 minute you're the star child, and the next minute you don't know what's happening because it's World War II just happened, It's a figure of speech for if you're listening and you're foreign from another country or whatever, and you're on here. It's a figure of speech, meaning that, like, all anger burst out from out of nowhere, and it's just it's chaotic and doesn't even make sense, and so if our parents are too busy or preoccupied with other things, we feel abandoned and not worth their time, right? Society, school, and classmates can also feed these deceptions or lies. People making fun of you, a lot of times when you're a believer or a Christian, I haven't had it happen in a while, but more recently, I've seen it really, like, with adults, and, really toxic behavior with grown-ups, like making fun of you because of your belief, using words to describe your prayer life or whatever it might be, and, really kind of like laughing about it, or, if they're together in a room, kind of making this fun thing. Oh, it must have been your angel or something, but not in a nice way, in a really mean, toxic way. And I am like, we're living in a world, it's not a surprise, and it's not uncommon, and it's not new, but we're living in a world that it's loose. It's become loose. And those are the things that cause wars, Those are the things that cause wars. Those are the things that cause separations. Those are the things that cause, it's trying to cause insecurity. It's trying to cause a low self-esteem, that you're stupid for having faith in the workplace or whatever, it might be. I had prayed for a woman And word got out that I had prayed for this woman, and people ran around saying, because her prayer was answered. Her prayer was answered, and though they meant it to be making fun of me, they ran around kind of making fun of me. And it kind of was a thing where they wanted it to hurt me. They wanted me to like, it made them uncomfortable because that prayer got answered. And it was making other people, more like supervisors and people like that, uncomfortable. And there's just this like backbiting like kind of thing, right? So we should know that in the end times, there's going to be like demonic forces and spirits and things that are unleashed on earth. And, we're going to deal with situations that, we think it's new because we hadn't seen it in a while, but it's not new. It's not a new thing. So we shouldn't be surprised when it does happen, because it's happened to Jesus. Okay. Even one of the disciples betrayed him. We all know the story of Judas Iscariot, right? He was one of the disciples, one of the beloved disciples. And he straight up in his face betrayed him to death for a few bits of money. That could be like a competition, in the race for a job position, ratting you out, or, trying to gain, favor at your expense. It's toxic. It's toxic behavior, but it's not new. It's not new. It happened to Jesus, okay? People, some of the disciples in his arena, our beloved disciples, the ones that we liked, in the Bible, the characters that we liked, fought for position. And even a mom even jumped up in there and was like, you are going to put my sons on your, to sit at your right side, right? As, like trying to gain favor, trying to, promote their kids, right? And so we see it happening over and over and over again. And, we see it kind of, when it happens to us personally, we're like, we tend to be thrown off balance a bit, because we're like, what is going on in the atmosphere? Like, it doesn't even make sense. And when it doesn't make sense like that, there has been unleashed demonic things going out there, in your arena, in your area. And so you do have authority over that. I'm not expecting you to stay in anything toxic or anything like that. You don't have to stick around and, be abused or, bad-mouthed or, scared. You don't have to stay in that. You can leave. But you also have been given the authority that while you're there, you can, do what you need to do, and not let anyone stop you. No one stopped Jesus, okay? He did what he was meant to do. He walked this earth. He preached the gospel. He shared the good news. And he was betrayed by one of his close disciples, okay? And he was taken to death. And that was the point at which he was taken to death, right? During which time, one of our other favorite disciples, is in a situation where, some soldiers are ready to, take hold of Jesus, and Peter is with them, and, Peter's spontaneous, and, he whips out his sword. He's not like a amateur sword person, you know what I mean? He knows what to do with that sword. And so he like whips out his sword, and he's just like, whoop, and he cuts somebody's ear off. And Jesus is like, no, Peter, like, chill out, dude. He's like, this is my own words. This is not in the Bible. But Jesus does say, Peter, it's not time. And so Jesus picks up that ear and he puts it back on the person, and this ear, is healed on this person. And so that person is like, obviously that guard is like tripping out. Without a doubt, he's tripping out. He's like, what just happened? My ear came off, fell on the floor, and this Jesus guy who we're about to seize and take in just put my ear back on, and it's all well and better. How did that just happen? He's confused in the moment, tripping out. He's going to go home and tell his family what happened, I'm sure. His buddies, while he's out drinking after, he's done with his guard thing that he's done. He's going to be like, man, that dude Jesus, who's going to be crucified, he put my ear back on, dude. What the heck? What just happened? You know what I mean? Stories were told. But in the midst of all of that, do you think that Peter felt some low self-esteem, some insecurity? Do you think what was Jesus feeling, right? Was he wondering, like, hey, he was trusting his Father, God, to see him through to the end, knowing he's going to be crucified, right? So there were feelings going on, and it's just like you and me, just like when people say to me, I like to sit down and have conversations and hear the stories of strong women, as though I'm some kind of influence, And I'm just thinking to myself, like, should I tell, the story that you want to hear, or should I tell the real story? So the real story is, right? The real story is how terrified I was, but then how at peace I was. And how uncertain I was, but yet how filled with faith I was. It's a crazy kind of conversation. How do you articulate that? So I want you to think of some areas in your life where low self-esteem, where you're reminded of some low self-esteem issues that come up. And areas of your life where you feel less than. Do you feel less than? There are times when I have been, I have sat with some of the world's most known preachers. I have sat next to them. I have, gone to dinner with them. I have, had laughs with them, talked about Harleys with them. And some are just my equal. But they are known, and people think they're super duper powerful people, right? They're just people like you and me. And they talk about things that they have had fear, or they even laugh. We kind of laugh sometimes behind the scenes in the green room or whatever about how people perceive, the power of God. That it isn't coming from us. It's coming from God, and, people, how people perceive you when you are the person delivering the message or whatever. And so we have to keep ourselves in check, right? We have to remember that, and it's hard to remember that because you start to believe that you are the healer, that you are given the attention. But that attention needs to be given immediately back to God. So, we do feel some low self-esteem. People do go home after they've preached an awesome message up on the pulpit. Thousands and thousands of people healed. I have, a friend who I've known, a young man who I've known for years and years, watched him grow in the ministry, as a little kid. He's friends with my kids, and, if I were to tell you who he was, which I will never tell you who he is, but, he's mega known. I mean, mega known. And yet he has areas in his life, or has had areas in his life where he has had paralyzing fear. Paralyzing fear, can go and preach a message, thousands of people healed, but yet can't get in the car and drive home, and so there are things in us. We're just human that for whatever reason we have, some traumatic whatever that kind of hinders a part of our life or keeps that kind of, it was Paul who talked about a thorn in his flesh. It kept him kind of in check because he was, pretty powerful, a pretty strong, powerful person. And whatever that thing was, the ailment or whatever it was, kept him kind of, trusting God constantly. And so, I don't wish any of that on anyone. I don't want anyone to be that. But, sometimes we preach so much hope in people, and in some cases, some people are not going to be healed. They're going to have that thorn in their flesh to the day they die. But they can do amazing things. They still can make choices to be amazing people. They still can move forward. They still can, fulfill their dreams. Whatever the dream is, what they want to do in life. They still can follow the Lord Jesus Christ. Not everyone's going to be the pastor, the preacher, the chaplain. Not everyone is going to be that. But there are going to be people who are going to go on to be, mega inventors or, amazing dancers or, whatever it is that they choose to do, or a wife at home raising amazing kids, right? All of those things are extremely valuable and important. None is less. And so whatever it is, wherever you are in life, you are valuable and you can go on to do some amazing things, even if you have, that thorn in the flesh, which could be, some people have a depression that won't leave them. Some people have, some people have lost a limb. They're not going to grow it back. You know what I mean? And it hurts them. Sometimes maybe they feel some insecurity, low self-esteem, that they live with, I'm a former motocross athlete, and, I have the mega scars from broken bones and, crashing on the bike during races and, have some gashes around my mouth where it hit my mouth, and scars on one of my hands where it's just like, terrible looking, just awful. And, now I'm a grown lady and, and it's just not, doesn't look beautiful, what people think is beautiful. And I laugh when people say, "Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful." I'm like, well, I say thank you gracefully, graciously. I say, "Oh, thank you," and I'm thinking in my mind, if you only knew, like, if you only knew, like, so there are areas where each of us have some kind of low self-esteem, right? That kind of bothers us. But I want you to, I'm going to start to close, and I want you to start to think about this. Who are you in relation to Christ Jesus? Who are you in relation to Christ Jesus? Okay? Do you feel accepted? Do you feel accepted in the body of Christ? When we say the body of Christ, like, do you feel accepted, to be a part of God's life? Do you believe he created you as a beautiful individual, that he looked at you and said, wow, this is good, and he doesn't look at you like you're flawed or like scarred or, he looks at you like you're amazing, you're valued, okay? Do you believe it's true? Do you believe that that is true? So sometimes we do have poor behavior. There are times with poor behavior. And when we all have it, we all have it. I know a lot of times people like to say, you have it, only you have it. But we all have it. And some people like to micromanage that. But we all have it. And what is the best thing to do is to create an awareness on how does that, when you have made some choices in some bad behavior, that will cause low self-esteem, okay? It will cause some insecurities in your life. That just comes with it, and so we have to believe that, when we bring that to the Lord, when we admit to him, when we confess to him, those things, that bad behavior, whatever it might be, we believe that he forgives us, okay? It's a clean slate, but it's a bad memory in our mind. So we're still going to be left with some low self-esteem, but we can overcome it because we know we're forgiven. And we need to change that behavior too, because you keep doing that behavior, you're going to be in a spiral of low self-esteem. Some examples of this type of behavior: I criticize others so I can feel better than them. I criticize others so I can feel better than them, okay? I don't affirm others because I am afraid that by doing so, I might diminish myself in comparison. You ever been around somebody and they never give you any kind of affirming language? You ever been around someone like that? They never give you any kind of affirming language, okay? Listen for it. That'll tell you what's inside of them, okay? They may be, funny. They may be this. They may be that. They may even be likable in some cases. But you never hear any affirming language coming out of their mouth, right? It's because they have a low self-esteem that if they do They will diminish themselves. They think it's giving them power, strength, or something. Another behavior is I shop, drink, eat, use drugs and or alcohol, gamble, watch TV, etc., to cover up my bad feelings. So people come home from work and, wherever they are, or they're at home, and they just numb themselves down by doing those things, okay? That causes low self-esteem too, because you're not dealing with the issue. You're just escaping the issue. You're running from the issue, and it's not going to get better. I need to do adrenaline pumping, high risk activities to compensate for my less than feelings. So this is more me. This would be my thing. For instance, like, you heard my story. And so, that I didn't reach for drugs and alcohol. That was never in my story. But I did, do things that I felt like, when I did those things, like ride motorcycles to a high level, or, I seen that get the attention of my dad, who then, would brag about me to everyone. And I thought that was the way of getting some, some self-esteem, some attention kind of thing. Right. I know I don't live in that anymore, because I've worked through, my dad is no longer with us. He died. And, so I don't get that from him. So I've learned, through self-awareness and through these lessons, that this is my thing, and there's nowhere to get that. No, there isn't any other person than my father who will be proud of me. There isn't that other person. He was the person. So in this scenario of adrenaline and all that. So, the power or reason for me doing that kind of diminished. It doesn't exist anymore. So, I don't need that anymore. That's not a thing that I reach for. I do like to show off from time to time, I do. But that's just me being silly and fun, but, and careful and old. So, I try to project a perfect, well put together image so people won't see my faults. Okay, there are people like this, they're the perfectionism people, the ones that you see that, they have every piece of their clothing all creased, and, everything is neat, every hair is in place, their YouTube looks excellent, and all of that is okay. That's not saying it's not okay. It's okay. But are they doing it to compensate, for a feeling of low self-esteem? I don't know. They would have to, realize that or whatever. This is just causing an awareness, creating an awareness. That's all. That's all it is doing. I stay in surface relationships so I won't have to be vulnerable. Anybody in that situation where you can't have deep, meaningful conversations, right? So I've been sharing stories for a zillion years, a zillion years in my walk with God, okay? So, I have immediate, deep, meaningful conversations with people, okay? And some people are so impacted that they don't know what to do with it. I've shocked them so much that, they're just like, they're still in thinking mode. So I've brought them to a realization of maybe some things in their life. Maybe some thoughts are coming, to surface about the realization of God being real. And they're like in like dazed mode. They've been dazed by it, and I thought I was doing something really wrong at one point. And I realized that, because I'm naturally like that too. So, hence the reason why I do what I do and the things that I teach, that I love to do. But, even when I was younger, when I was, a young teenager and things, my home, I was always the mama of the group. I was always, caring for people, making sure they got fed, and, very loving, caring person. My grandma would always say, you're such a hummingbird, because I was always humming, but, you are so kind and caring. And this was what she was constantly say to me. So, if you remember some of the things that your, grandmothers have told you, your grandfather or whatever, that kind of makes you realize the type of person that you are, or that you kind of were born with that kind of behavior, right? So even in my younger years, I would have deep, meaningful conversations with my best friends and stuff, and it wasn't, hard for me to do, we would have, like how to work things out, and, the meaning of life, and, stuff like that. And so I was just a big dork. But some people keep it surface level. And I've been around people that, I may I've learned to listen a bit better and not be a deep, meaningful person with a person who is not there, okay? They may not be a person who's vulnerable. They may be a person who protects themselves, right? And you feel that because you feel this kind of protective mechanism, or they won't look you in the eye, or they avoid a certain certain lingo, of conversation, and or they might get antsy or uncomfortable, and excuse themselves that they have to leave or something, and so they're not in that space that makes them uncomfortable. So, but it's a protective mechanism because of low self-esteem. Okay, I am resentful for not being liked the way I am, and I don't like people the way they are. That's low self-esteem. So here's something that I learned along the way from Dale Carnegie. You can listen to Dale Carnegie videos all day long, but I actually went to Dale Carnegie training, okay? And Dale Carnegie teaches that when you just simply let people be and you like them and you show that you like them, well, guess what? They like you back. And so, I never knew that. Like, there are a lot of people that never knew that. And one of them was in the class, there was this pro tennis player. Okay, she was a pro tennis player, and she was so stiff. I mean, she could win games. She was, the life of the game when she was in the game, but outside of the game, she was awkward, did not know how to talk with people, would not like, you couldn't even like get this kind of, what I just read before that was like, you stay in surface level relationships. You could not like, she wouldn't even say hi to you when you're like in the hallway or whatever. She just, everything was business, like, so like robotic and stiff. And you just was like, oh my goodness. You thought she looked like she was stuck up, basically. She looked like, I'm too good for you, don't touch me. and you didn't want to touch her. You didn't want to look at her. You were afraid to say hi. So, and it was because she had such low self-esteem off the court that it affected her ability to have charisma with people, right? So that's why she went to Dale Carnegie, to help further her career in tennis as a pro tennis player, but also to, when she goes to the parties or whatever, news things or whatever, she has the ability to have some charisma. So our trainer had her, up in the front a lot, and sharing, different parts of her life that she was willing to share, that was vulnerable to her, right? And so at one point, she was sharing some things, and she started to cry, and we all were like, oh, and we cared for her, and she felt the energy of that caring behavior, non-judgmental. She thought she would be judged or things, but no, we all cared for her. In fact, we did like a group hug, which she was very awkward with. And, by the end of the course, she was laughing, and she was, saying things like, oh my gosh, I love your hair. I like your hair. I've been wanting to tell you that, I didn't know if I could or couldn't, or, what. And, she was, just a different person, because she was allowed space to be vulnerable. Okay, we saw past her steel-like protective barrier, and we got to the heart of the real her, the hurts, the betrayals, the championship, the things that she loved, things that made her happy as a tennis pro, right? And so it was very, very interesting. The more you like people, the more they like you back. Simple as that, really. Practice just liking people. You don't have to go as deep as I love you. Oh, I love you, but I'm running around all the time saying, I love your hair. Oh my gosh, it looks great. People some people are uncomfortable with the compliments, and that's just a part of their low self-esteem or protective mechanism. So you just back off a little bit. You gotta know your space there. But okay, so some of the things that I'm saying, you're becoming aware of, you're realizing some things, right? So you can take that and practice some of those things. And I'm just reading 3 other things that that counteract low self-esteem, and that is that we need to accept our true identity, right? So that's what we did with this tennis pro, right? So she shared some vulnerable stuff, and to a crowd of people, strangers, who later became friends, right? And she felt the safety in that, given permission to do that. And why is it okay to do that, right? So it was needed. Her whole demeanor changed, and she looked more approachable and friendly. So we need to accept and be thankful to God for the gifts He's given us, right? So she had amazing gift of, being able to play tennis at a high level, and accepted her. She even shared some of the vulnerability that she shared was that I don't like to tell people that I'm a tennis pro, in regular, when I walk out at the store meeting someone, for the first time or whatever, because I think that they're going to think that I'm, full of myself or whatever, and yeah, but there are those people that will think that you're full of yourself. This is a given. Those are people that are out there. But the majority of people are going to be like, wow, that's super cool, right? That's really cool. Tell me more about that. So we must begin to change our ways. As we behave in a godly way, our self-esteem will increase. So, accepting God and accepting others. All right, so let's pray. Father, I just pray for all of those who are here tonight and listening to this message. And I pray, Lord, that you just help each and every one of us bring peace and love and hope to those that are listening, and to heal us, but not just to heal us, but to teach us through the things that we find difficult. Teach us through that, in Jesus' name. So I want to read some of these. People are saying, "Hey, Gloria, what's up? Hey, what's up? I see you there." What does that say? Nate? Is that Nate or hate or? I can't see that very well, but Ray, what's up, Ray? Kick flip, yes. Oh, I didn't realize you can see my skateboard back there. Let me see. Do an ollie, they say. Let me see. I prefer truth to comfort. I prefer truth to comfort. That's cool. Yeah. Who says that? Ray says that. What does that say? Anton. You should practice out in Sinaloa. Or practice skateboarding. I prefer I can't read that. Let me see. I'm not wearing glasses that I can read what you guys are saying right now. I'm so sorry. Oh my God. Okay. Ray says, ew. Why are you saying ew? Anton is saying check her out. Your work on is amazing. Oh, your work is amazing. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Anton is saying your work is amazing. It's kind of like let's see. Ray says, "What's this about?" Somebody is saying something in another language. Hi, bye. Somebody's asking me what my pronoun is. Let me see. Hi, say hi. Someone says, say hi. Please reply. So I can't really reply when I'm like teaching a lesson. I will reply after. Good day. Good day to you too, said Soul. Yvonne Camacho. What's up? Okay. I don't know what they're saying. Let me see. I think Christ is amazing. I think Christ is amazing. Wonderful. And somebody is talking in another language again. God bless you too. Old something. My goodness, I can't. Old movie something. Can't read it. And again, with the saying something in another language. And let me see. Dreams of truth. Blessings, sister. Blessings to you too. Preach and amen, Randy says. Okay. Someone says, I don't have a car or a phone to contact the outside world. I don't, okay. Someone says, hello, beautiful. Someone says, blah, blah, blah. And someone says, hi, mommy. Someone says, beautiful. Let me see. Jesus knew what needed to happen. Yep. Someone's asking me. Okay. I don't have a boyfriend. Someone's asking me about a boyfriend. I don't have a boyfriend, and I'm not married. Somebody's saying something that I don't know what they're saying. All right, guys. Wow. Ooh, you're commenting a lot. Can't even catch up with that. Hey, what's up? Somebody says, hey, Gloria. Happy blessed Sunday to you too. I think that's Tracy. Is it Tracy? Oh, no, that's our friend. That's back again. Well, thanks for being here again. All right, I am going to let you guys go. I got to get on into work. Don't know what time it is. What time is it? Oh, my goodness. Woo. Yeah, it's almost time. And the next lesson is it's called Resentments, Hurts, and Struggles. We're going to talk about that, okay? Before we talk about that, we're going to talk a little bit about repentance. What does that word mean? You can go look it up. Google it. But we're going to talk about it. And the next part of the lesson is resentments, hurts, and struggles. It's pretty interesting. I'm talking about bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, slander, and all of that stuff right there. Okay? I'll let you guys go. I love you guys. Thanks for being here. You guys are awesome. And God bless you. And I'll see ya on the next live Sundays at 8 p.m. Sundays, every Sunday at 8 p.m. All right? I'll see you later. Go check out some of my jump roping and some of my skateboarding tricks that I put on there. I'm not good at skateboarding at all, but I do skateboard, and I do tic-tacs. Is it called tic-tac? Yeah, it's called tic-tacs. And a little wheelie. I can do a little wheelie. They used to call me the Wheelie Queen, and on a motorcycle and on skateboard too. I was just fascinated with wheelies. I don't know why. So I'll let you guys go for now. I love you guys, and you guys are just as awesome. Okay, you guys go out into the world and be incredible humans. I love you. Bye.